Has Essendon really been in quote-unquote crisis, or has it just been a bit of a media beat-up? I don't think we're in crisis at all, and I'm going to explain why in this video.
Always had the passion and the iron will. No one doubts the courage.
So if you're like me and you absorb all the Essendon news you can, you would have noticed a certain narrative around the media over the last couple of weeks, where every time something happens at Essendon, it's usually phrased in the following manner. It's usually phrased as more tumultuous times at Essendon, or more crisis at Essendon. The club can't keep out of the news, or something like that. But if you look closely at a lot of the stories, most of the stories are either not true at all, or they are true but they've been exaggerated, or they've been taken out of context. And I just wanted to go through some of them. Before I start, I'd just like to say I've been listening to Andrew Welsh and all the interviews he's been doing across all the media outlets, and I've been very, very impressed with him. I think he sounds good, he sounds impressive, and he sounds like he wants and is absolutely emphatic in getting a unified Essendon. He had a pretty good interview on 3AW this morning with Tim Watson and Gary Lyon. He was also on Footy Classified last night, and I thought that was very interesting to listen to. And the more I listen to him, the more encouraged I am that the club is heading in the right direction, at least in putting all the things in place off the field. I don't know what you guys think, but that's certainly my takeaway from listening to him on the first 24 hours since ascending to the presidency. But there has been a lot of what I consider to be not fake stories, because I don't think journalists I don't think they make stuff up, but often they over-sensationalise things, or they try to, what I call, join the dots to then try to create a story that's not really there. So the first thing that I think will probably end up being a bit of a non-story that we're phrasing as being Essendon in crisis is this board spill. Now, it may or may not happen. Andrew Welsh was asked about it today. He says, look, he doesn't know if it's going to happen. He hopes it doesn't. But everything I've seen from Andrew Welsh in the short time that he's become the president indicates that he's after and wants to see a unified Essendon. If you listened to Footy Classified last night, you would have noticed that James Hird was talking about an email that got sent from a former player, not him, to about 365 ex-players asking for everybody to get behind the new regime. And a lot of the responses to that email have been very, very positive, so he was saying, and so everybody has been saying. And that leads me to come to the conclusion, I think, that there either won't be a board spill or it will just end up coming to nothing. First of all, if there was a board spill, I don't think it would be successful. Everyone I've seen on social media, all the comments I've seen, everybody seems to be wanting the new administration to succeed and to get behind them and to want a stable club. So I think this board spill was I think there was a kernel of truth to the story, but I think it's going to be one of those things that comes to nothing, and I think you'll find that everybody will unite behind the current administration. It's really a non-controversy, I call a controversy that's not really a controversy. And you could see from Andrew Welsh today, everybody at Essendon, all the comments I've seen on the YouTube videos and all that sort of stuff, everybody wants the current administration to succeed. And I think that email that got sent out to everybody, that sounds encouraging to me, because it sounds like the feedback from it is that everybody wants a stable Essendon. If you like this channel and the content I provide, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. It does take a lot of time and commitment to get these videos out on a regular basis. And if you could reward me with a subscription and a like and a comment, then I'd really appreciate it. So the second story that I think has been a total beat up really by the media is the so-called player exodus at Essendon. I think this has been ridiculous. Now, the Merritt thing is true. We know that. Merritt did actually meet with Sam Mitchell. No one's denying that. We all know that's true. But there's a fair bit to play out there in that story anyway. And in the end, it's only really involving just Merritt, the one player. And I've said that I'm prepared for Merritt to leave now. If he doesn't want to be there, I think I'm quite excited about what we could potentially get for him. But listening to Andrew Welsh, and even listening to Merritt himself, who really said a lot but didn't really say anything on Brownlow Medal night. He was talking, but I think he'd mastered the art of how to speak without really saying anything, if you understand what I mean. We don't really even know what's going to happen. Welsh is adamant that Merritt's not going anywhere. So I'm more confused as ever with this sort of thing. And I don't know if Merritt's arm is going to be twisted and be convinced to stay. the longer this goes on, the more I'm convinced he'll probably end up staying, even though right now I think there's probably a higher probability that he goes. So that's a difficult situation. We still don't know what's going to happen. And I'm not denying that story is true. Like I said, I'm prepared for him to go, but if he does end up staying, I hope they can let bygones be bygones and, work coherently with each other next year. But apart from the merit situation, the other aspects of this so-called player exodus have been nothing but a beat-up. The Ridley thing, I actually called this out. For those who have been watching this channel, I actually mentioned this when it happened. I thought the Ridley comments that he wanted to get traded, whilst true, I thought it was indicative of a player who was emotionally reacting to the end of the season. 13 consecutive losses to end the season, injured though he was, Ridley. Obviously, your emotions are going to be at their most volatile at the end of the season, and he asked for a trade to Brisbane. But my call on that was, and I believe I've been justified in it, that once Ridley sits down with the new high-performance manager, which he has now, Matthew Innes, and they have a bit of a chat about where he's going to take the club in terms of the how the fitness regime is going to work, and acknowledging that he's contracted until 2029, and they have a bit of a chat, all that will get smoothed over. I had no doubt that it was just an emotional reaction to the end of the season, and I totally understand that. It's absolutely understandable that a player is going to be quite emotional and a bit over the top when the season comes to an end. But once everybody settles down, and once you sort of have a chat to the new high-performance manager and all that, I think that was always going to get smoothed over, and it did get smoothed over. And Ridley has actually said yesterday that he's absolutely 100% committed to Essendon, and that's great to hear. Draper leaving, yes, we know Draper was leaving, but let's put things into perspective. Draper has never finished top 10 in Essendon's best and fairest. He's only played approximately half of the available games that he could have potentially played as a player, just over half. And we're going to get maybe pick 6, at worst pick 19. So imagine if you get pick 6 for a player that's never finished in the top 10 of your best and fairest. So yes, he's leaving, but really we're going to win out of that deal, at least in terms of the value of the draft pick. Now, I acknowledge, and I have said in previous videos, that Draper, in the short amount of games he did play this year, the 5 games he did play, was in the best form of his career. But that's a small sample size of 5 games. It's unlikely he would have maintained that form over the course of a 23-game season. He might have, but it's unlikely, especially when you look at his career, where he hasn't finished in the top 10 in the best and fairest. So whilst it's a bit of a loss, certainly we win out of the draft pick that we are going to get for him. What annoyed me more was when Jayden Laverde was thrown into the narrative about a player exodus. I mean, it just shows you that the media don't know what they're talking about. Jayden Laverde is a loyal Essendon player. He doesn't want to leave, and he got delisted 2 days ago. He got delisted because he saw the writing on the wall. He knew he was going to get delisted, and he wanted to leave so he can go to GWS, where he will probably end up for a couple of years, and good luck to him. The reality is he was a 5th-string defender who probably wouldn't have played in the seniors this year had the 4 defenders ahead of him not been injured. So the whole notion of putting Laverde in the so-called player exodus, I thought was absolutely ridiculous, and just showed them that they don't know what they're talking about. The other thing I think that was a beat up, and I thought it was sort of ridiculous to devote an entire page worth to this story, was this phone call between Dave Barham and former Essendon champion full forward Ted Fordham. I didn't want to dwell on it too much because to me it was a non-story, but it kind of annoyed me that it was, you devote almost an entire page to it in the paper. Look, regarding this, obviously Dave Barham would use his words a little bit better next time. You shouldn't obviously swear at people and you don't lose your temper. I get that. But if you were to make a story about every time someone from Clubland got into an argument on the phone or swore at someone, you'd have 25 stories a day. All right, this is just not a story. I think what's happened is that Barham, whilst he would have had his time over again, been a bit more polite and not swore, I get that, he was obviously standing up for his coach, Brad Scott, who he supports and thinks is a good coach. And Ted Fordham was criticising him. Fordham was going on about, in the Essendon-Richmond game, the Essendon was kicking backwards at the end, and he was sort of blaming Brad Scott for that. And and Barham was saying, no, look, Brad's a good coach. And he ended up losing his temper, as you do. Now, I don't, you need to control your temper, that's fine. But sometimes people don't. Sometimes people go a bit over the top. But Barham's heart was in the right place. He was sticking up for his coach. He shouldn't have sworn it at Ted, but I can imagine what was going on in that phone call. Like Ted Fordham was probably going on about what he didn't like, and Barham's on the phone with him, and he's secretly thinking to himself, look, I respect this guy, former Essendon champion, but how do I get him off the phone? How do I get him off the phone? And then he's lost his temper and he's sworn. This is not really a story, right? I mean, who cares? I mean, two people had an argument on the phone, and I think he's apologised anyway. So to me, it's not that it wasn't something that happened. It was more that why would you devote an entire page of your paper to a meaningless argument on the phone? It's just a total beat up. The other thing I thought was a beat up, and I think is a slur on the particular player's character, was the so-called AFLW controversy, which has been shown to be nothing. Caroline Wilson was reported that Zach Merritt was disrespecting the women's team by kicking the ball on the field or something like that with them, and it's been totally refuted. And I think this is an absolute slur on Zach Merritt's character, whether you like what Zach's done or not, with meeting with Sam Mitchell. Saying he's disrespected the AFLW team is ridiculous. And it was clarified actually by Tom Morris, who reported that Merritt and the teammates were conducting a goal-kicking practice when the AFLW coach asked them to move slightly, which they did. And that suggests the incident has just been exaggerated or misinterpreted. And it's just an example of looking at the media taking these tiny little things where there's a kernel of truth, or in that case, no truth at all, and turning it into something which I think is quite insidious because it makes it a bit of a slur on Merritt's character. So when you count that, what I think is the beat up over that phone call, the so-called fake narrative of this player exodus, which hasn't really happened at all, the fake board spill, which, look, may come to fruition, but I don't think will be successful. And I'm predicting now, and I might be wrong, that it probably won't happen. I think we find that Essendon is actually not in crisis at all. And I actually think our off-field position is quite strong. I think we've put a lot of good things in place over the last 4 years. We've turned over all the major positions, the president, the CEO, the coach, the high performance manager, the recruiter. All that is in place. All those people are in positions that they've been in between 1 and 3 years, or in Brad Scott's case, entering his 4th year. And I think the best thing for all those people to do is to be able to do their job and do it well, and then we can reassess in a few years' time as to whether it's working or not. I'm pretty confident with the current regime, with Andrew Welsh at the helm, that we can get things going and start to see some results pretty soon. And I don't think we're in crisis at all. I think it's a fake narrative. And I just wanted to make a video to get that off my chest. What do you guys think? Let me know if you agree or disagree. Please like and subscribe to this channel. And as always, go Bombers!
Bombers fly, watch the